Okay, so picture this, right? It's 1897. You're about to hop on a train. Not just any train, though. This one's cutting right through the heart of Europe. You've got your journal, maybe even one of those fancy new phrase books ready to, like, soak in all the new sights and
It was
sounds.
a different world back then, wasn't it?
Totally. And that's the adventure our boy, Jonathan Harker, the main man in Bram Stoker's Dracula, is about to embark on. Well, sort of. I mean, it starts as a business trip to Transylvania, but let's be real, it takes a hard left into spooky town pretty quick.
And he's meticulous, this Harker. A solicitor by trade. Not the kind of bloke to just let the world pass him by. He's recording everything.
Oh, yeah, and we're talking about those juicy journal entries from chapter 1 here. Each one is like a brushstroke in this masterpiece of Gothic horror. But it's the details, like the food he eats, the folklore he hears. That's where things get really interesting.
Stoker just drops us right into the thick of it. Late 19th century, a world on the brink of massive change. Harker's practically straddling two eras. He's got his fancy train travel, but he's also stepping into a region where superstitions still hold sway.
It's like a culture clash waiting to happen.
Precisely. A train ride from, say, Munich to Transylvania. Back then, that was practically like stepping into another dimension.
And Harker, being the meticulous guy he is, jots down everything. I mean, the guy even writes down a recipe for, get this, paprika Hendel in Bistritz. Calls it a national dish.
You can practically smell it, can't you?
Yeah.
The paprika, the chicken, all those spices.
Right. It makes you wonder if he packed his appetite for more than just legal paperwork. You know what I mean?
It's those little details, the food, the customs, that make Harker relatable. Someone you could imagine yourself sharing a train compartment with.
Except maybe not this train compartment.
Ah, but that's where Stoker's cunning comes into play. He uses these everyday details, these glimpses into Harker's world, to subtly hint at the darkness bubbling beneath the surface. Remember when Harker mentions doing research at the British Museum?
Yeah, he was boning up on Transylvania before the trip.
Exactly. And in his own words, he describes it as the heart of an imaginative whirlpool, a land steeped in superstition where ancient fears still linger.
And boy, does that whirlpool start spinning. I mean, his first night in Bistritz is anything but relaxing.
Think about it. You're in an unfamiliar town, night falls, and suddenly, out of the stillness, you hear the howling of dogs.
Okay, creepy, but dogs howl, right?
Sure, but in Transylvania. A land steeped in folklore, with tales of creatures that prowl the night. It takes on a whole new meaning, don't you think?
It's like Stoker is whispering in your ear, be afraid, be very afraid.
And then there's that incredibly awkward dinner conversation when Harker mentions Dracula to his landlord and his wife. You could practically hear a pin drop.
Oh man, the tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife.
Their reaction speaks volumes even before they utter a word. They clam up, fingers instinctively moving to cross themselves, practically shoving him out the door. It's like the name itself carries a weight, a fear they can barely contain. What do you make of that reaction, knowing Harker's clueless about who he's about to meet?
Right, it's like they've got this huge secret, something they desperately want to warn him about, but they're just too terrified.
And as if that wasn't enough, his elderly landlady, she practically throws herself at his feet, begging him to stay put, especially since it's, you guessed it, the eve of St. George's Day.
Because of course it is.
Naturally. And she's convinced all the evil things in the world will have full sway. Talk about adding fuel to the fire.
Seriously, it's like Stoker's throwing one spooky ingredient after another into the cauldron.
And this, my friend, is where his genius for weaving folklore into the narrative truly shines. St. George's Eve, a night steeped in superstition. The veil between the natural and the supernatural is at its thinnest.
No wonder Harker, our rational Englishman, is starting to feel a chill down his spine.
He's stepping into a world where belief in the unseen, in the creatures that haunt the night, is as real as the carrot he's about to board.
Speaking of which, can we talk about that coach ride from Bistritz to the Borgo Pass? Because, oh boy, does that journey take us from idyllic countryside views to some seriously creepy encounters. It's like the scenery itself is like, turn back, dude. This is where the fairy tale ends and the nightmare begins. And the deeper they go into those mountains, the more those passengers start to lose it.
They're practically burying him in religious charms and amulets.
Right. It's like he's heading into a battle with like a dragon or something, not a business meeting.
And you can practically feel their anxiety seeping into Harker. He's this rational Englishman, remember?
Yeah.
But he starts jotting down these whispered superstitions. Tales of werewolves, vampires, evil spirits.
Trying to keep a straight face the whole time.
Exactly. But Stoker uses this folklore brilliantly. It's not just to scare us, though it does that pretty well. It's to show that clash, between Harker's modern sensibilities and these ancient beliefs that are just oozing out of Transylvania. It's like he's caught between two worlds, and they're starting to blur together.
And then, just as the tension is about to make my head explode, bam, they hit the Borgo Pass.
Even the name sounds ominous, doesn't it?
Oh, totally. Like a gateway to another realm, or like a dead end, maybe.
It's this narrow passage through the mountains, all mist and shadows, right? It becomes the focal point for all those anxieties that have been building and building.
Harker even says he feels this like heavy, oppressive sense of thunder as they go into the pass.
It's like nature itself is holding its breath, right?
Yeah.
It's incredibly atmospheric. Stoker just nails that feeling of creeping dread.
And just when you think it can't get any weirder, bam, Dracula's coach just shows up.
But not in any kind of showy way.
Not at all. It's more like it just like materializes out of thin air.
It's this sleek black carriage, 4 horses, appearing right when Harker's starting to think he's been left out in the middle of nowhere.
Talk about bad timing. Or I guess good timing if you're Dracula.
Stoker knew exactly what he was doing. He gets us all worked up, waiting for Dracula, imaginations in overdrive, and then, bam, he gives us this understated entrance. Way creepier, if you ask me.
Oh, absolutely. And then there's the driver. Those eyes.
Piercing red eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like burning coals. And those cryptic little pronouncements he keeps making.
You cannot deceive me, my friend. I know too much, and my horses are swift.
I don't know about you, but if I'm Harker, I am getting out of that coach and hightailing it back to Bistritz right then and there.
It's like he's toying with Harker, isn't it?
Totally, like a cat with a mouse.
And what's so great is that the driver never actually says he's anything supernatural. He's just, like, existing in this space of ambiguity.
His words are just loaded with double meanings.
Like he knows more than he should.
Exactly. And then one of the other passengers, she's obviously terrified, and she just throws out this quote from Berger's Lenore.
For the dead, travel fast.
Chills, man, chills.
It's like they've stepped into a world where the normal rules just don't apply anymore.
And Harker, bless his soul, he's still trying to cling to some semblance of logic. He pulls out his multilingual dictionary, starts translating words like Ordog, which is like Satan, and Pokol, which means hell.
It's like he's desperately trying to ground himself, Find something familiar while everything around him is just getting weirder and weirder.
But even language is taking on these creepy new meanings. It's like the more he tries to understand, the more he realizes he's totally out of his depth.
Exactly. He's entering a realm where logic and reason are useless, where the unknown is just waiting to pounce, literally, because the real psychological torment starts with that coach ride.
Oh, yeah, because being whisked away in a darkened coach by a dude with glowing red eyes isn't creepy enough.
Not even a little bit.
Then Stoker hits us with the feeling that they're going in circles. Like the same landmarks keep popping up over and over.
Like the landscape itself is messing with them.
Right, like some kind of twisted game.
It's brilliant, though, isn't it? That idea of nature being distorted, controlled by some force we can't even comprehend.
And then, of course, there are those weird blue flames.
Okay, yeah, those are something else.
They were seriously freaking me out. It's not just like regular spooky flames.
No, definitely not your campfire variety.
It's like they were, I don't know, dancing or something, like right on the edge of reality, appearing and disappearing as they pleased.
And that's what Stoker does so well, isn't it? Leaves it open to interpretation.
So are they natural or like totally supernatural?
Are they some weird swamp gas phenomenon that Harker in his heightened state is just misinterpreting?
Or something way more sinister?
Perhaps a sign of the, let's say, unseen forces at play. Reminds me of those will-o'-the-wisps from folklore,
Oh, right. Those flickering lights that, like, lure travelers to their doom.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Not exactly the kind of light show you want to be following in the dead of night,
Mm-hmm.
especially in Transylvania.
And Harker even mentions seeing the driver, like, interacting with the flames at one point.
Oh, you mean where he's placing stones around them?
Yeah, like he's making a pattern or something. What do you make of that? Even the driver, who seems so, in tune with this otherworldly stuff, he's still navigating by them.
It's like he understands their language, the secrets they hold. And that's classic Stoker, blurring those lines between what's real and what's not. Leaves you wondering.
Totally. Okay, but if the blue flames weren't creepy enough, then we've got the wolves.
Ah, yes, the wolves.
We go from hearing them howling in the distance, which, okay, terrifying on its own, but then suddenly they're right there, surrounding the carriage, hundreds of them, glowing eyes, those tongues just circling.
Stoker really knows how to paint a picture, doesn't he?
It's like a scene ripped straight out of a nightmare. And it's the silence, too. After all that howling, just goes dead quiet.
He actually says they were 100 times more terrible in the grim silence which held them than even when they howled.
Ugh, I get chills just hearing that.
It's that feeling of being hunted, right?
Hmm.
Of being watched by unseen things. Just taps into our deepest fears.
And what's crazy is the driver. Totally unfazed.
Cool as a cucumber.
In fact, it's like he commands them or something.
He's not afraid of them, that's for sure. Steps out into the darkness, gives a little gesture, and poof, they just melt away.
Yeah.
Vanish.
It's like they never even existed. You know, this whole scene makes you think about the power of silence in horror. It's not always about the jump scares or the gore, you know?
Sometimes it's the quiet moments that are the most terrifying.
Okay, but finally, the tension breaks. They arrive. Dracula's castle. I'm not sure relief is the right word, though.
No, not quite.
It's like the journey itself was just a warm-up. You know, like a palate cleanser before the main course.
A gradual stripping away of Harker's sanity to prepare him for what awaits.
And Stoker's description of the castle, don't even get me started.
Gothic perfection.
It's like this massive ruined fortress just silhouetted against the moon. No lights, just silence, like it's holding its breath, waiting for him.
The castle is Dracula, in a way, this ancient, decaying power lurking within those walls.
And remember how we were talking about the landscape being all distorted and wrong? It gets even worse inside the castle. Like, time itself is out of whack.
The shadows are deeper, every sound seems to echo forever. The laws of physics just don't seem to apply.
And Harker, he's starting to lose it. He keeps questioning his own senses. Like, he can't trust what he's seeing or hearing.
The air itself is thick with doubt and suspicion.
Yeah, and then, he finally sees him. Dracula.
Standing at the top of the stairs, candle in hand.
Stoker doesn't hold back, does he? Tall, pale, those piercing eyes, and that mouth.
Like a predator.
It's the perfect gothic horror villain entrance, but there's also something, I don't know, alluring about him, too.
Remember what Harker says about his handshake?
Cold as ice, right?
But with this strange pressure, it sends a thrill of repugnance through him.
It's that weird mix of being drawn to him and absolutely terrified at the same time.
Dracula's got that in spades, doesn't he? That dangerous charm.
And from that moment on, every single interaction is just electric. So much unspoken tension. Like when the coachman refuses to bring the luggage to the door, Dracula didn't even bat an eye.
Total power play. He's making clear this is his domain.
And then there's that whole bit with the mirror.
Ah, yes, the infamous mirror scene.
Harker catches a glimpse of Dracula, or rather, the lack of Dracula in the reflection. Talk about a gut punch.
It's like all those whispered superstitions, all those fears he'd been trying to ignore, they all come crashing down.
He's trapped in a castle with a creature that laughs in the face of nature. And to think, this is only chapter 1.
We're just scratching the surface.
This has been incredible, but I think I need a little break from Transylvania for a bit, you know, just to catch my breath. For anyone listening who's about to start Dracula, you might want to grab some garlic and a nightlight. You're going to need it.